What are the first key steps you would see a city making to come to grips with where it stands, with managing itself, with becoming more resilient and prepared?
Well, when we kicked off our campaign, making cities resilience, 5 years ago, we actually asked them what they needed, and surprisingly, this group of mayors, they said they needed a handbook. So I thought there must be lots of handbooks in the world. But what they said, they wanted a straightforward, exactly that, where do we start? So we did something that is now called the local government self-assessment, according to 10 essential things to look at. And the 10 essential things includes social issues. Who are the most vulnerable people in your community? Where are they? It's hard things, it's infrastructure, but it's planning systems, responsibilities, and how do you work together. So that's the self-assessment. On that basis then, you would, as a city, small or big, get a fairly good idea where your soft spots are. And after that, you can either take the next step to a very detailed and maybe sophisticated inventory. We have a scorecard. Or you do a plan and you start working with where you actually have. And many cities have been doing that. So that helps you with understanding where your sensitivities are. So if you are a very big city, of course it's a big plan, but you mentioned New York. It's more like the boroughs in New York need to plan for themselves and have a strong community network, which they can involve all of them to identify soft spots for safety, for people. The infrastructure issue was a really big issue in New York. The power supply was a pretty big issue. I happened to be there during Sandy by coincidence, at the UN meeting, of course. So it was interesting. I think New York was a serious lesson learned for many cities around the world, rich country, very sophisticated city. And the main vulnerability was our very sophisticated systems, actually, because we don't believe that they can collapse. We're not really thinking about it before.
You've got the UN ISDR RISE program or scorecard that you're working on. There's also the Making Cities Resilient program. Can you explain what they are, how they work together, and what they want to accomplish particularly?
Mm-hmm. Well, the Making Cities Resilience program was an initiative for us in the framework that guides our work globally, how we can support countries and communities. There was a mentioning always an understanding that what you do locally is very critical for success. But at the global domain, of course, the local is a little bit invisible. So the purpose with that campaign was to really put the spotlight on municipalities, cities, small and big, to give them space and also to motivate cooperation on risk issues and resilience issues in urban areas. So all this has worked well. Countries cannot achieve their resilience objective if the private sector sits on the side and don't think that this has got anything to do with them. So a few years ago, in relation to this global assessment report, we did with PwC a survey of how private sector companies actually see themselves and disaster risk. And the result wasn't very encouraging, so clearly something can be done here. So that was one part of it. The other one is that we have a partnership with private sector, which is a campaign-like initiative to engage them in working with us on learning, convincing their own industry of the need to actually plan everything from business continuity planning. So in both these areas of initiative, what came out from our collaboration with PwC and RISE, which is a very project-oriented effort, but everywhere came out the very strong desire and interest by private sector to work with cities. And not surprisingly, cities are concrete, results come quickly, it's normally quite easy to talk to them, and they have a key interest in their own resilience, not least to make sure that private sector establishes themselves there. It's good for the economy, it's good for the image. So out of that emerged then this collaboration, which now ACOM, PwC, IBM and many others are involved in. And depending on their expertise, what their competence is, now we look at that as one of the major instruments that we can offer in the partnership, is to facilitate business, private sector engagement with urban issues and cities.
And it sounds like the process you're describing, in a sense, is grassroots, like the boroughs of New York, understanding and banding together, or like the people in the Netherlands did, business, the private sector, and the public sector, in a sense, a collaborative.
Yes, very collaborative effort.